Hey everyone, this is Andrew from Private Investigator Advice, and this is episode 87. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing the pros and cons of taking your dog on surveillance. But before we get into that, I just want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Private Investigator Advice. Private Investigator Advice offers three different templates currently, one being the intake sheet. That's the information that you get about your client and about your assignment that you'll be doing. We also offer the retainer agreement. That should probably be done in conjunction with the intake sheet, where everything's laid out, where the expectations for not only the investigator themselves, but for the client. So you guys both have an understanding of what's going to be taking place, how much you're going to be getting paid, what their expectations are about your investigation, what you're going to be doing. So that's an important document to have. The last one is always my favorite to talk about. That's a surveillance template. That is a template that lays out a format for you to enter in your daily surveillance, whatever took place. And to make sure that you had a good idea of what goes into that template, I also added an example report for you to kind of see the verbiage and where things go. But just to make sure you even know a little bit better, I also added a video that kind of walks you through it a little bit. Make sure you know how to put pictures in the document, things like that. You can change any of these documents. They're all Word documents. You can add and take away no matter what you want. Anyways, if you would like to take a look at that, I will put a link in the bottom of this video. It's in the notes, the details area. If you're listening to this podcast just through your phone, there's going to be links to that in the podcast notes. And of course, you can always get this information at piadvice.net. Okay, so I wrote an article a while ago. And the reason I wrote this article a while ago was because I saw a tweet, and I'll make sure to put the video or the picture here. And it was from this investigation company, and it was funny. But they had three dogs in the back seat, good-looking dogs, and it said something to the effect of, "All right, headed out to my morning surveillance," and they had these three dogs back there, and so. I know this, this type of things happen. And so I thought it was worth talking about. And just to let you know, I'm a complete animal lover, love dogs, even kind of converted my wife. I mean, she wasn't that much of like a dog lover, but now she loves dogs since we've been married so long now. And my kids and all that kind of stuff, they're all into animals now. And so much so that we even started fostering a couple of years ago dogs, and that's a hard thing to do, to have a dog, and then you got to give them away to somebody else and trust that they're going to take care of this dog as well as you want them to be. But anyways, I will actually put a link to we're in Washington, so I'll put a link to the foster place that we go through, and she's pretty. She's got some good, she's a good company to cooperate with in regards to fostering, if that's something you're interested in Washington, you happen to be in the state. Okay. So I know there's pros and cons, right, to taking dogs on surveillance. And I really had to reach to pull the pros, to be honest with you. And remember, I love dogs. And so, but since I wanted to give you some pros and cons, that's what I'm going to do in regards to this topic about taking dogs. So we'll stick with the pros first because I want to start on a happy note. The pros of taking a dog on a surveillance is you're going to have a buddy with you. You're going to have somebody in the car with you to you can chat with a little bit and keep you company on those long surveillance days. And you're not going to have to be alone. This is a lonely job when you're doing surveillance. So that's number one. Number two, the pro of taking a dog on surveillance with you is your dog isn't home by themselves and just, waiting for you to get back. So, they're not sitting in a crate or however you keep your dog. So that's a pro. And the third one is, if you're really creative, you can use your dog as a prop. In some situations, it's better to walk through a neighborhood with a dog than just kind of creepy walk by yourself through a neighborhood. And if any neighbors like me are watching you, then you're suspicious. But if you have a dog, I'm less suspicious. But that doesn't, if you're around here, I'm going to still be suspicious of you. But anyways, okay. So that's definitely something, you can use a dog for, especially like if you're going to some, outdoor surveillance situation where it's an outdoor event and it's common for people to have dogs. What a great time to bring your dog then, right? So. Okay, so listen, and also if you have more pros that you think are ideal, be sure to go ahead and leave them in the notes here, and I might add them to the original article for others to read. Okay, so the cons of taking a dog. Now, this is probably a little more relevant of a list here. One of the things you might have to do is you might have to leave them in the vehicle. Sometimes you have to leave your vehicle to follow somebody, and you just don't know when you're going to be back. And so that would be my major concern as a con, because, some states, they're maybe cold states or not, for like Washington, for example, 9 months out of the year, we're not even hitting temperatures more than 50 degrees. So vehicles in Washington don't get that hot most of the year. But when I do surveillance in California, or when I did rather, every day was going to get a hot day in the car. So there wasn't too many days that, the car wasn't going to heat up. So I guess that's what I'm trying to tell you is if you have to leave in the vehicle, there's a good chance that you have to leave them in the car, and you have to leave them in the car, then that's a bad situation for a dog. And I would not be happy about that. That would be a big no-no in my opinion. So anyways, that would be a con, right? You'd have to worry about that. So you might have your dog with you. The next one would be as a con, your dog might have to relieve themselves. And if you're in a surveillance situation and you know that your dog might have to do that, then you might change your surveillance position to necessitate that, to anticipate that. And when you anticipate that, that might be taking you away from a better surveillance position, or taking away from the case itself, because now you're not necessarily putting the assignment, as an importance. You're more worried about where your dog, can you take your dog out and go to the bathroom? And so that could affect it. And that's not, in my opinion, that's something you need to consider if this, what you're doing is going to affect, right? Because that's what the next one is these things might affect your choices. And so, if you have to think twice because you have your dog in your car about going on foot to follow somebody, then having a dog in your vehicle might not be a good choice. If it changes the way you drive or where you park, like I just mentioned, then having a dog is taking away from serving your client on a surveillance, and that would not be good for your client. And that, we always talk about, you want to do the best for your client, and you're not doing that if you have to think about those things. The next thing is you might, having a dog in your vehicle might actually compromise your surveillance position. What if your dog's in the car and maybe they see something that bothers them and they start barking? And now maybe that draws attention to you. Now there's some dog in the car. Now whether they can see you or not doesn't matter. They can hear a dog barking in the car, and that's going to change things. That could maybe change, how your surveillance goes, or maybe pushes you out of your surveillance position, because, most of the time we're not trying to be seen in our cars. Like we don't want to draw attention to ourselves. We want to be invisible, right? So that would be another issue. So those are really my pros and cons. If you have more cons you can think of, or maybe stories where dogs have affected things, definitely let me know, and I'll consider adding it to the original article. It won't make it into this podcast, obviously, but these are just some of the pros and cons to think about. But I do have some surveillance stories with dogs. One is a story of a friend. It's not, some kind of fantastic story or not, but these are the kind of things that I reference to in my mind when I talk about this topic. So I do know of one surveillance investigator, a friend of mine, and this investigator takes her very small dog on surveillance. And the dog sits in the front seat and basically lays in this little bed that, she made for her. And the dog just basically lays there, does nothing. And the times that this investigator takes this dog on a surveillance is those times where they know that there might not be a great deal of activity. Now, of course, you never know what's going to happen on a surveillance, but and she kind of anticipates some of these things. Is it rainy? Is it sunny? How much activity does she anticipate? Like this person's going to go to the store every single day or something like that. Like she's worked it before, and now she kind of knows like the routine of the assignment. And so even if she actually has a bag that she sticks her little dog in and takes her in. So with her, there's nothing affecting the surveillance that's taking place. She's kind of anticipated all the things, so nothing that's going to happen is going to affect the way that her surveillance goes. If they go into a store, she's going to pop her dog into her bag that she has, and she's still going to be able to get covert, surveillance video, and no one's going to be the wiser. So that was her. And she doesn't do it all the time, but I know that she does do it sometimes. Okay. So my personal surveillance stories with dogs. And so my first story, I don't, just kind of some context here, I don't take my dogs on surveillance. I have dogs. I don't take them on surveillance because that, in my mind, all these cons would come into play, and I can't stick any of my dogs in a bag. So, but let me just tell you these two quick stories real quick. So, and they're nothing fantastic, but the first time I took my dog, the first dog encounter I had on a surveillance it was early in my career. It was like the first or second year. I think I was still working in California, and I had lost my claimant, and I was driving. I think I was just en route to go back to their house to set up and wait for them to come back. And on my way back, we were in kind of some stop and go traffic in this, in the city, wherever I was. And there's this dog, and this little, he was a younger dog, just running through traffic. And I'm like, the dog lover, I'm like, oh, no. And I jump out of my car, stop my car in the middle of the street, and I'm trying to shoo this dog out of the street. Like, I don't want it to get hit by a car. Well, this dog runs around my car, jumps in my car, and sits in the passenger seat. And I don't have time to argue with this dog about getting out of my car. I just got in the car and drove. And so I ended up having this dog in my car for the remainder of my surveillance. I don't remember how much longer it was. It might have been like 4 hours or something like that. But I made like, water for it, for the dog, and a little bowl so he could, eat. And he didn't really, or he or she, I don't know what it was, I can't remember now, but didn't have to relieve himself or anything like that. But I definitely gave him the opportunity, and it did affect the way, it didn't affect my assignment per se, but I did probably set up differently. It's been a long time now since that happened, but long story short, the dog finishes his surveillance with me. It didn't bother me. Just laid there. I was just happy to be in a warm place, I can imagine. And I ended up taking him to the local shelter. And of course, I don't want nothing to happen to this dog bad, so I made sure to know, hey, please give me the information about this dog. I'm going to follow up again tomorrow. I want to know if someone came and picked him up. And, the next day I call and they're like, yeah, the owners came, they picked up their dog. And I was like, yeah, all right, good. I was very happy about that. I don't want, anything bad to happen to a dog. You never know what's going to happen in these shelters. So that was the first surveillance related story with a dog, not my dog, it was somebody else's dog. The second time I had to have a dog in my car was I used to have a diabetic dog, and for a couple of years actually, we had to give the dog insulin. I didn't even know dogs could be diabetic until we found out my dog was diabetic at a certain point in her age. Her name was Josie, and so Josie had to get a shot twice a day, one in the morning and one in the evening, and that was just to regulate her blood sugar when she ate. So one morning, I headed off to a surveillance, and in the morning, I fed her, and I gave her shot, and I forgot to tell my wife that I gave her shot already. And so it was like midday, and I was talking to my wife, and in conversation, she said, and I had lost my subject, and I was I can't remember the entire context of it, but basically similar situation. I was like headed to another destination. Maybe it was to find them. I can't remember what the case was. Anyways, so No, I think I did lose him. But anyways, I told my wife, and she's like, "Oh, I gave her a shot too." I'm like, "Oh no!" Like I was panicking. Like, is my dog gonna just die because she bottoms out with her blood sugar? I didn't know. So on my way back, which was en route, I stopped by my house, picked up my dog, and fed her and put her in my car. She's this little thing. She's diabetic dogs lose a lot of weight, and you got to do a lot to kind of keep the weight on them. But anyways, I put her in my car. She was happy to be with me for the remainder of my surveillance time. It didn't affect anything. Everything I did didn't affect any of my surveillance, thank goodness, in that particular situation. I just didn't want her to crash and not be there to do something about it. So anyways, nothing happened. My dog was fine, thank goodness. And, she's no longer with us now. But it was nice to be able to have her with me for that day. Anyway, so yeah, again, that was my two stories. For me, like I said, I've never intentionally brought a dog with me on a surveillance because of all those things I'm worried about. And I think that if you get into this industry and you kind of have thoughts of doing that, really consider that. Because you really don't want it to affect the way you do surveillance. You don't want to have to do something that potentially would be unsafe for your own dog, leaving them in a car or something like that in a hot day or anything like that, or whether, you just don't. You don't want to, I don't know. I have strong opinions on that. But if for some reason, some way you can kind of work around that, and maybe you guys can share, if you guys do that, your workarounds, that'd be great. But that's the reasons why I don't. And so, yeah. Anyways, guys, that's my podcast for today. This episode is also brought to you by Audible. Audible has a ton of books. I'm actually going to be ordering another one soon because it's one of those books where I can't picture myself just sitting down reading. I've been using my Kindle to read a lot, my Amazon Kindle thing. To read some other books, which I'll be sharing in the near future here. But this is one of those books where I can't picture just sitting down and reading. I'd rather have someone read it to me, and I'm in my car a lot, so that will work out well. Anyways, Audible has a ton of books for you to listen to. Someone's going to read to you, and you can get a free 30-day trial and a free book. And all you have to do is sign up at www.audibletrial.com/PIA, and it will let them know that I sent you, and you'll get that free book. And so as long as if you don't like it, you just go ahead and cancel before the 30 days, and you still get to keep the book and listen to it. And that's pretty awesome. So anyways, check that out if you're interested. When you sign up for something like that, it supports the Private Investigator Advice network of things, and we appreciate you if you decided to do that. Anyways, even if you don't, we still appreciate you. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for all your kind words lately. I really appreciate that. And that's it. I guess we'll see you guys in a little bit for next week for the next podcast. Have a great day. Bye-bye.